hppodcraft.com.
Welcome back to the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast at hppodcraft.com. I am your host, Chris Lackey, with fellow host.
This is when I say my name. I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
There you go.
You would think that we've done like 80 of these now, that we'd be better at this.
Yeah, we're not. We've learned nothing.
Well, what are we talking about here on the show today?
We're covering the second part of At the Mountains of Madness, and it's one of Lovecraft's best-known works and biggest.
And we've barely scratched the surface here. I mean, what we talked about in the last episode was that this group of scientists from Miskatonic University put together an expedition. They went out to Antarctica just to bore into the glaciers and get some soil samples and just learn about a part of the world that at that time in history people didn't know very much about. Yeah. You know, we had explorers. A lot of these guys are big inspirations for Lovecraft when he was writing the story. Naval Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd. Mm-hmm. He was an aviator and he's a navigator. I mean, guys like this in Shackleton, these guys that went out there and and said, hey, this is a part of the world that we don't know anything about way down there on the southern cap of the planet, and we're going to take the risk, and it is very risky to do this, right?
Oh, yeah, super dangerous.
As you were saying in the last episode, is probably at that time the best equivalent to interstellar exploration, in that you're going to this unforgiving portion of the world. I mean, you will die if you don't have some good furs and lime juice. You just can't go outside. Explorers are really interesting because I'm sure that there's a sense of personal glory you get from it. There's a sense of egoism, but at the same time, you're acting on behalf of the rest of the human race. You are an ambassador to an unknown realm. I'm going to go check this out. I'm going to tell everybody what it's about, and I can see how Lovecraft wanted to celebrate these guys. This story is about that, except it just goes kind of horribly wrong in a lot of ways.
And it's got monsters.
And monsters, of course.
Where we left off, these guys had just found a crazy imprint that they have no explanation for. The footprint or the marking of a large creature, Precambrian, which is between 570 million years ago to 500 million years ago. That's Cambrian. So it's before that. At that time, there should only be small, tiny little creatures. But this thing is huge. And everybody's excited about it.
Yeah, contradicts everything that...
Changes everything. This is a game changer here.
Right.
They were planning on going east, but they say, hey, we need to go west, or actually northwest, because that's what these samples are taking us to here.
That's what Lake is saying.
That's what Lake is saying, yeah, the biologist. But our main guy, Dyer, says, well, we should stick to the plan. If we want to get all these things done, we should stick to our plan. We've planned for this. We shouldn't do that. Everybody else is like, no, this is a huge discovery. We have to check it out. And he kind of feels like, I'm going to get vetoed here, so let's just do this. Obviously, it's a big deal.
I think Lake is kind of a jerk in a way.
He is. And we see a little bit of him kind of doing his own thing later on in the story.
Yeah, but, Dyer didn't have to let him go.
No.
This is Dyer's expedition.
Yeah.
And he's in charge, but he let him go. And then when we'll get into it, but as he's sending reports back, he's like, don't you wish you could have come?
Yeah.
Who's awesome now?
Yeah, and Dyer's super nice. Well, that's later, but Dyer congratulates him, is super cool about it.
I know, and he keeps rubbing his face in it. It's really funny.
Such a jerk. On January 11th, Peabody takes a group of 5 dudes and scouts out ahead just to see if he's right, if there's anything going on out there.
Yeah, that's from the text, right? Lovecraft wrote 5 dudes.
And then he comes back and he says, yeah, look, I found more stuff. This is totally the way we need to go. So on January 22nd, they move most of the expedition to the northwest by about 300 miles.
And it's not like they're on little planes that skip between Hawaiian Islands or something. I mean, these flights are quite long.
Yeah, hours.
They're in the plane for 6 hours, right, to cross this distance. They're in there for a long time.
Yeah.
That's the time it takes to cross the United States.
Well, I mean, obviously, we're flying in planes much faster than they are, but still.
No, we're not. I still take these planes. I have... Hey, there's a great parody of the Polar Express children's book that Ken Hite
Oh, right,
wrote,
yeah.
called The Antarctic Express.
The Antarctic Express, yes.
That's like a children's book adaptation of this story. That's great, and we'll put up a link to it in the show notes, but it's something everybody should check out.
It's good.
It's really good, yeah.
Continuing on with the story, as they are flying ahead, they send a wireless report.
You can't imagine anything like this. Highest peaks must go over 35,000 feet. Everest, out of the running. Atwood to work out height with theodolite while Carol and I go up. Probably wrong about cones, for formations look stratified. Possibly Precambrian slate with other strata mixed in. Queer skyline effects. Regular sections of cubes clinging to highest peaks. Whole thing marvelous in red gold light of low sun. Like land of mystery in a dream or gateway to forbidden world of untrodden wonder. Wish you were here to study.
Well, that's nice, actually. Wish you were here.
Yeah. Now, just to give you an idea, when he says he thinks it's 35,000 feet, Mount Everest is only 29,000 feet.
Wow.
So this is even bigger than Everest.
In this story, we get into all sort of prehistoric monsters and what their intentions are, and Shoggoths and all these things that are monsters and they're scared. But the scale of this stuff is the really horrifying part. You know, if you got dropped off there, there's no walking out of it. No. You know what I mean? You're just done.
Horrible. When they're up there and they're kind of looking at this mountain, he keeps seeing strange glimpses from beyond it. It looks like things are maybe some ramparts up there, or some strange cubes. There's lighter colored rocks. It's confusing to him. He's like, maybe I'm not seeing things right. Maybe it's just the distortion of the atmosphere or something. But it looks like something strange is going on.
And that's when they reference Nicholas Roerich again.
Yes,
because of the those strange cubes. It's
cubes.
very bizarre. Yeah,
exactly. They also use a theodolite, which is a surveying instrument that's used to measure horizontal and vertical lines. So they're able to use this instrument to figure out exactly how tall mountains are.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things I had to look up while I was reading this, because I didn't know what they were talking about.
So they all get on the horn with Captain Douglas, who is the captain of one of the ships.
The Arkham.
No, he's on the Arkham, that's correct. And they say, well, okay, things have changed. We were planning on going east, but now we're going northwest.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And he's like, okay, sure. Maybe we should set up a direct route, start planning, supplying it to there instead of going to you and then you going to them. And then he's like, okay, yeah, that's probably a good idea. After a while, Atwood's measuring all these things and trying to figure out exactly how big this area is, and he finds five peaks that are between 30,000 and 34,000 feet high, which is again super
Crazy.
big. Yeah, super big.
Now in the story, how are we getting this information? It's like sort of we're just getting reports, right?
Yes, there's they send wireless reports back to Arkham, and then everybody's being informed as things are going on, because this is an exciting expedition, and the Arkham advisor is printing these reports.
But it's a cool way to deliver the information, because you get a bit here, and then they build on it in the next one, and then they build on it in the next one.
Exactly.
These little bulletins keep coming in, and they're weird, and then it's weirder.
So now the only guys left at the old base camp is Art and Dyer and Peabody and a couple other guys. And they only have one plane. All the other planes have gone up to this new location. Since it looks like everything's going to be moving up there, Peabody and Dyer kind of pack up house and get this thing all situated to be left for a while. Lake and his crew, they land and start setting up shop. They get to boring right away. They start finding samples. Everybody's super excited, but then they find a cave.
Uh-oh.
Yes. So they find a natural cave, and
they're gonna find some cave creatures.
Well, they find all dead kinds of cave creatures to begin with.
Okay.
But they're skeletons. It looks like maybe of some kind of vertebrate fossils. Something had been bringing things in there and maybe eating them, because they find these weird holes in the bones, as if made by some kind of tool, something. There are these strange punctures in the bones. Strange. All this is really strange. But inside, there's all types of Cretaceous period creatures.
Just yesterday, this is kind of almost completely off topic, but
sure.
I went to the Getty Villa here in Los Angeles, which is a museum that specializes in classical and Greek and Roman art.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And some of the sculptures that they have, they had a sculpture of Zeus that was probably from like 100 AD.
Wow.
It had lived underwater so many of those years, hundreds of years, had just been submerged, because I think they'd gotten it out of a shipwreck.
Oh.
And so it had been bored into by mollusks that actually had made Zeus their home,
Right.
And and then they restore the statue. It looks very good, but there's tiny little holes all over it. And I don't know, I was just staring at it and imagining this statue of Zeus just underwater for years and years and years, with all these animals that were kind of dependent on it. And it's this beautiful, kind of classical face where he's just staring off into space, and I could just see the water going past his face. And something about it to me was very Lovecraftian in a way.
Yeah.
Just the long period of time, it reminded me of the temple a little bit. And I was thinking even about this, how here it was in front of me, something that human hands had sculpted almost 2,000 years ago that survived and told me something about their culture.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into that later in this story. And it does seem a little preposterous in the story that people could learn so much about the alien culture just from their art. You do learn a lot. You learn a lot about not only that culture that made it, but what has happened in the intervening years because of the way that it's been eroded. I don't know. Off topic a little bit, but it's just something that was on my mind when I was...
It's totally on topic. What are you talking about? All the life forms in this cave are ancient. They're pre-mammal, mostly reptilian, and some dinosaur-type stuff. Mm-hmm. And everybody's excited. Again, our narrator warns that the stark, raving Moorcock expedition shouldn't come.
Yeah, they shouldn't do it.
They shouldn't do it.
Don't go.
And then he continues on with the story. They discover more of these fossilized footprints of these big mollusky five-pointed things. They find some from 600 million years ago.
What?
Which is a long time. So the craziness of it is that means that this creature has not evolved over hundreds of millions of years. In fact, they even say, well, it looks like it might be a slight de-evolution in the way that it's moved. And it's like what is going on? So everybody is going nuts because this. I mean, the quote here that he says is, "will mean to biology what Einstein has meant to mathematics and physics." Mm-hmm. So
that's a great quote too.
Yeah.
Well, can you imagine discovering something like that?
Yeah, it's insane.
Whatever this is. Oh, you can imagine it? I can't. That would blow my mind. I think I would pee my pants in excitement and revelation.
I would just get really excited about it.
Oh, okay. Maybe I've said too much.
You've said far too much. So then the next portion of it, these are all updates from Lake.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about. You get the little bullets.
They find these weird soapstone fragments that are about 6 inches across and about 1.5 inches thick. And they're kind of this greenish stone, and they're shaped like 5-pointed stars. And they have these strange markings on them or engravings. But what's really crazy about it is the dogs hate it. They flip out at these little stone things. Like anywhere near it, they start barking, they start growling, and start going nuts at stone, which is really bizarre.
It is. Well, dogs sense evil.
They sure do.
Sometimes when a dog barks at me, I wonder, does he know like the bad stuff I've done?
What?
Is that dog looking into my soul right now? Does he sense my evil? He smells it, right?
Chad, is this something you want to talk about? Anyway, the next report.
10:15 p.m. Important discovery. Orendorff and Watkins, working underground at 9:45 with light, found monstrous barrel-shaped fossil of wholly unknown nature, probably vegetable unless overgrown specimen of unknown marine radiata. Tissue evidently preserved by mineral salts. Tough as leather, but astonishing flexibility retained in places. Marks of broken off parts at ends and around the sides. 6 feet end to end. 3.5 feet central diameter, tapering to 1 foot at each end. Like a barrel with 5 bulging ridges in place of staves. Lateral breakages, as of finished stalks, are at equator in middle of these ridges. In furrows between ridges are curious growths, combs or wings that fold up and spread out like fans, all greatly damaged but one, which gives almost 7-foot wing spread. Arrangement reminds one of certain monsters of primal myth, especially fabled elder things in the Necronomicon. These wings seem to be membranous, stretched on framework of glandular tubing, apparent minute orifices in frame tubing at wing tips. Ends of body shriveled, giving no clue to interior or to what has been broken off there. Must dissect when we get back to camp. Can't decide whether vegetable or animal. Many features obviously of almost incredible primitiveness. Have sent all hands cutting stalactites and looking for further specimens. Additional scarred bones found, but these must wait. Having trouble with dogs. They can't endure the new specimen, and would probably tear it to pieces if we didn't keep it at a distance from them.
whoa.
By the way, our reader today is Joe Fria. That was who we just heard, and we've heard a couple of times on the show.
Yes.
Thanks for doing the readings again, Joe. He's going to be with us for the duration of this trip. Just wanted to throw that out there real quick. And the other thing about this, The Thing, the movie,
yes.
the film.
Right.
This really reminds me of The Thing. Now, I'm talking about the old one, actually, or The Thing from Another World, or whatever it was originally called. Well,
right.
It's all based on a story by W.E. Campbell called Who Goes There?
Yep.
Which was written for Astounding Stories, actually, right? This
yeah.
is the same magazine published it in 1938. But in the original, The Thing, it was kind of a half-vegetable alien.
Right.
That's such an interesting notion that you can't. Is this an animal? Is it a vegetable? I don't understand the way that this thing is working.
Well, right. Well, I mean, it's defying all natural laws. I mean, you're in totally new territory here. It doesn't understand. It's pretty much unchanged over hundreds of millions of years, which is almost unheard of. And it was existing when there was only single-celled organisms around.
Which means that there's a whole world of civilization we don't know anything about.
Exactly.
Some kind of animal was on. It's crazy. I do have to say that many times during the story. And this stuff is all really exciting, but later when it gets a little boring, I think, I really should just throw on my DVD of The Thing. Now I'm talking about the John Carpenter version,
Oh, dude.
It's like which has so much similarity to this, but also it's a little different. But gosh, that's a good movie.
Well, totally inspired though by The Mountains of Madness, and Carpenter said so, that he loved Lovecraft, and he did the movie Mouth of Madness, which is totally Lovecraft inspired.
He's a big fan, and a lot of times you'll hear people say when you're talking about Lovecraftian film adaptations. Yeah, there's a lot of adaptations of the direct stories, but actually the best Lovecraft movie is The Thing.
Oh my God.
Even though it's not a direct adaptation, it's got everything that these stories aspire to, but it's told in a completely cinematic way. I just love that movie so much.
It's so good.
It shares a lot of commonalities with this in that the creature's unfathomable. You can't quite understand. But even from the beginning of that story, where the helicopter's chasing the dog.
And the Norwegian,
something else already happened, and the people are left trying to pick up the pieces from something that already went down, which happens in here, right? And we're in that section of it right now.
So we're going from here. He gives way too much description, in my opinion, of the elder things, like measurements of all of their different limbs and how big they are, and as a scientist would. So this is probably the most detailed description of a Lovecraft creature ever.
Yeah, this thing is not unknowable. It's very knowable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very well described. And it's a little hard to imagine. I actually was going online and trying to look at other people's art.
Right.
How they drew these things, just so I could kind of envision it. And it's pretty interesting because they can exist underwater. They can also fly.
Yeah.
They're very tough. They're very elastic. Everything in their body is kind of built to exist in any environment and be able to do anything. At first, it seems like just such a weird creature. It's just a big barrel with appendages.
Right.
But the more I was thinking about it as I was reading it, I'm like, this makes sense that this is something that evolved to such a high level. It's got those vegetable properties that keep it from having the problems that mammals have. It doesn't really age. It's just it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's super cool. And one beef though that I had in that little bit, he mentions that it reminds him of the primal myth of the elder things in the Necronomicon, which means Lake has also read the Necronomicon.
I'm telling you, dude. It just gets passed around. It's like a dog-eared copy of The Lovely Bones or something. Like everybody's just handing it around to each other. You have to read this. It's at cocktail parties. You haven't read the Necronomicon? Oh, my God.
Oh, golly.
I will give you mine.
Lovely Bones. Anyway, and one of the last little transmissions that Lake gives here, he says this.
Dyer and Peabody have read Necronomicon and have seen Clark Ashton Smith's nightmare paintings based on text and will understand when I speak of elder things supposed to have created all Earth life as jest or mistake. Students have always thought conception formed from morbid, imaginative treatment of very ancient tropical radiata. Also, like prehistoric folklore things Will Marth has spoken of, Cthulhu cult appendages, etc.
Wow. So there's a lot there.
And he's tying in other stories. I mean, he's just tying in what he just wrote with Wilmarth and with Amigos. It's so cool.
Yeah, and his buddy Clark Ashton Smith.
Yeah, exactly. Friend of Lovecraft's, who Lovecraft really loved his work. He was a writer as well. And so, he's tying him into his story.
Yeah, that's really cool. Gave his friend a shout out there. I love the horrifying concept that Earth life was created either as a mistake or a joke.
Yeah.
It was funny. Some ancient race that we can't understand created we've evolved and we find ourselves to be very important and the dominant species on the planet. But as it turns out, the whole thing's a joke.
Well, this is one of the things that I really dig about Lovecraft, where he kind of takes an opposite approach. I mean, he's neither the religious person who tends to have a more positive, benevolent theme or reason for life in the universe and existence. And then an atheist, a person who doesn't, is kind of neutral. Like life just happens, whatever. Lovecraft takes it and says, oh no, it's not. It's neither of those things. It's either a mistake or a joke. Like it's intentionally malevolent.
Or the best case scenario, which is just kind of negligent.
Yeah.
I love it.
It is great. It was rolling around in my mind when I dug back into this, when I read that specific passage and I put the book down. I was just laying there thinking about it. It's something that sticks with you. And say what you want about, there are a lot of ways that you could attack this story. There are a lot of ways that you could probably break it down as an actual piece of fiction. But conceptually right there, it just, man, that sticks with you.
Yeah, it does.
At this point in the story,
both Peabody and Dyer are just freaking so excited, and they can't wait to get down there. There's been really bad storms,
keeping the planes from flying.
They're going to send a plane back to pick up the guys because they have one plane that they're holding for an emergency.
Back by the ships. So until the weather clears up, Dyer and Peabody have to wait. And Lake and his group continue to discover more of these Elder Thing bodies, which are in various states of condition. Some are really damaged, and others are perfectly preserved.
Yeah.
And he wants to start dissecting them.
That's freaking weird that they're perfectly preserved.
Especially that they're that old. Like, as far as I know, there's no organic life form, complex organic life form that has existed for over millions of years.
No way. How could those specimens be in that kind of shape?
Makes no sense. Maybe we'll get an explanation later on.
Yeah, maybe we will.
The next section, I'm gonna just kind of skip over this. He kind of goes into way too much detail again about this vivisection of this corpse, of this creature, and talks about how it's got a 5-lobed brain. It seems like maybe it's an amphibian, that it can fly, that it has properties of both plants and animals and fungus, and it's all these different types of things. Dyer, our narrator, he can't help but think of these myths of the great old ones that he's heard before, and about life being a mistake or a joke is really kind of upsetting him, and he's getting a little afraid and nervous. His scientific brain is way more in control here, but still a part of him is getting freaked out.
There's a lot of that tension throughout the story. He'll say to the reader, now I know you must think we're crazy for delving deeper into this, but you have to remember we're scientists and we're explorers, and that just takes over sometimes.
Yeah.
But always at his core, he's just shaken up by the revelations.
It's so good. It's so exciting and interesting. I can't get enough of this stuff. So after they're done with their study of the body, they kind of take the rest of the bodies and they put them under a tarp because the sun, even in freezing temperatures, can still warm things up, and they're just trying to protect it from the sun. They have to keep the dogs away because the dogs are going completely crazy.
This brings me to the conclusion that, again, my theory that dogs are the heroes in all of Lovecraft's stories.
Right.
They're the actual. But I was thinking about it as I was reading this. Here we are, humans have evolved so long, maybe our whole purpose was so that we could breed dogs and bring them along, and at some point we'll be replaced by the dogs who have the good sense to stay away from this crap.
Yeah.
They don't like it. If it's around, they want to kill it and move on.
Yeah.
They don't. They're the smarter life form.
Yes.
This is our whole purpose. It's not the robots. It's the canines who are going to replace us.
Absolutely. With Lake doing his studies and Peabody and Dyer waiting for the weather to clear up and them to send a plane back to get them, that concludes the second chapter.
Right.
And I think that's going to be a good time for us to stop the story right now. We are moving at a snail's pace with this story,
We
Chad.
really are. I blame myself.
But it's so good. It's such. This is what we've been working for, Chad, this whole time.
You're right.
We have gotten into the promised land of Lovecraft, and we've earned it.
You're right. We have. There have been some sad weekends where I was going through texts I didn't like very much, and
Right.
I'm glad to be here. Glad to be talking it over, and yeah, we'll just go at whatever pace we want to.
Exactly.
What do you think people want this show to end? I guess we could just rush through everything and get it all done.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, it frightens me, Chad. We're getting closer and closer to the end of Lovecraft's body of work.
Yeah.
We still have some great stuff ahead that I'm really excited about. But
Yeah, are you kidding? Challenge from Beyond?
exactly.
Actually, I don't know anything.
I don't know anything about that
Isn't that
story.
the one where it's like there's 9 writers and none of them work together, so they just keep picking it up, and like Robert Howard's in there, and then
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never read that, but I've heard really good things about it.
I might have even gotten the title wrong. Or something like that. Challenge from the Stars or something like that. Yeah.
I also want to bring up, before we sign off here, our promotion.
Sure.
We're doing our readings
Yes.
that we cannot forget about. We're having Rachel Lackey and Heather Klinke / Pfeiffer. She's Heather Klinke. She never changed her name, did she?
No, she didn't. She disrespects me daily with not changing.
Heather Klinke.
No, I don't know. Yeah, she's a comedian, and so Klinke. There's 2 K sounds in that name. How could I take that away from her? It's the funniest name.
It's a great name. It's a great name.
Yeah.
So Klinke is going to be reading Cats of Ulthar, and Rachel Ford Lackey will be reading Cool Air.
That's right, and we've appreciated the contributions we've gotten so far. We're getting actually, I don't know, we're about a quarter of the way there. We could definitely use your support because we're paying rent on this thing now.
Yep.
And a couple of people we got to thank. Joe Fria, again, thanks for reading on the show today, and we're going to have you on board throughout this process.
Right.
Reber Clark, thanks for the great music. It's beautiful.
Also want to thank our tech guy and design guru, Mike Mann, for everything, and our intern, Brooke Burgess.
And next time when we come back and get into this again, I think we're going to have Ian join us, yeah?
Ian J. Colbert is going to be jumping in on the podcast. I don't know how long we're going to be able to have him with us, but we'll have him for part of it. I absolutely love his adaptation of At the Mountains of Madness. I can't wait to talk to him about it. And, of course, everybody should know that Ian is also working with us on our graphic novel Deadbeats.
That's right, and that's going to be good stuff too. We're starting to get pages in from that. It's
yeah, it's.
I've never been so excited.
hopefully we're gonna get a publisher, and if not, we will self-publish, and it will get in your hands. Yeah. It's great. We are loving it.
And hey, since we wanted to wait until we had Ian on board next week to get into the next phase of the story, the horror at the camp phase, the show is a little short this week, and so we decided to try something that we don't normally do. We have a musical guest doing our outro. This is Australian hip-hop mythos-inspired outfit Humanoids doing a track they call McMurdo Boogie, which is actually kind of a synopsis of At the Mountains of Madness, so it fits right in right here as we're talking about the story. Of course, we'll put some information up about them on our page in the show notes. Hope you enjoy it.
With that, I'm Chris Lackey.
I'm Chad Pfeiffer.
And this has been the H.P. Lovecraft Literary Podcast.
At hppodcraft.com.
Well, I was just a boy when I first left town. We took dice breaking to McMurdo Sound. We had 2 ships and planes and dogs and months of supplies. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, an expedition with the university. We had heads of faculties, men of science, but what good did it do? And I was 19 then, but I'm older now. Still tremble when I hear the cold wind howl. Small group huddled in Antarctic waste. Things no one should see. Yeah, all started with a soapstone we found. Should've left it lying and buried in the ground. It was meant to science, it was hard to resist. And let it sleep in God's light. Take a lily, take a lily, take a lily. All I hear is take a lily, take a lily, take a lily. All I hear is take a lily. Body split in 2, the mountains will call. Radio died from the storm in the morning. I was almost relieved cause the news was unsettling. Star-headed creature in the eyes. I flew to base and the picture was grim. That day science lost some very fine men. Me and the professor now pressing on. Mountain wind blew loud. Take a lily, take a lily, take a lily. All I hear is take a lily, take a lily, take a lily, take a lily. That's all I hear. And then the plane rolls out and the peaks loom in. We were like a tin can in the buffeting winds. Over the ridge and the gale died down. Impossible metropolis below. Yeah, a dead city sprawled in embalming ice, star maps charting Mesozoic nights, images from pre-terrestrial time. The Necronomicon didn't lie. More terrifying was the stark revelation of unearthly forms that never made the migration. Created and deserted by things in the stars, shambling down those halls, singing. Tekalili, Tekalili, Tekalili. All I hear is Tekalili, Tekalili, Tekalili. Tekalili, it's all I hear. Tekalili, 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 all I hear. Tekalili, 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 Tekalili. All I hear is Tekalili, 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 Tekalili.
hppodcraft.com.
Tekalili. All I hear.